August 1977, Enfield, North London, a modest council house on Green Street. A single mother, Peggy Hodgson, is trying to get her 4 kids to bed when her 11-year-old daughter, Janet, comes downstairs, terrified. "Mom, the beds are shaking." Now,
Great accent.
it's going to get worse.
Okay.
Now, remember, this mom is single and there's no gentleman callers that night. This bed has no reason to be shaking.
Wow. Okay, well, Peggy tells her to go back to sleep. You know, kids have nightmares. Beds don't shake on their own. But then she hears it herself. A shuffling sound, knocking, coming from inside the walls.
She calls the police. WPC Carolyn Heaps. Now, WPC means Woman Police Constable. And if you think that sounds wrong, it actually was abolished to something gender neutral in 1999. At least that's what I read.
Interesting.
So Carolyn Heaps, she shows up, and in her official report, she writes that she witnessed a chair wobble and slide across the floor by itself. A police officer, on the record. And as any reporter show will have taught us, on the record, well, that changes everything.
What happened next would span 18 months, involve over 30 witnesses, fill hundreds of hours of audio tape, and become what many consider the most documented poltergeist case in history. Children levitating, furniture flying, and a voice. A horrible, guttural old man's voice coming out of an 11-year-old girl.
Was the Hodgson's family terrorized by something beyond the grave? Or was this the most elaborate hoax ever pulled off by 2 teenage girls since the Runaways?
Are you talking about my Joan Jett Runaways?
Yeah, how they pretended to be a real band.
Excuse me? Watch yourself. Watch yourself. Don't talk about them. So let's hurry this up because we have a discussion off record that we need to have. So welcome to Mugshot Mysteries. I'm your host, Kathryn.
And I'm Gabriel. And tonight we're knocking on the door of 284 Green Street. Whether something knocks back, well, that's what we're here to find out. It could be the ghost or... Drop the bat, Kathryn!
Sneaky footsteps in the night, clues that vanish out of sight. Grab your hat and magnifying glass. We'll talk this case and have a blast. Mugshot Mysteries, we're on the trail. Twists and turns that never fail. Laughs and chills, it's quite the show. Who did it? Tune in to know.
All right, before we dive into the Enfield case specifically, I think we need to set the stage a little bit. Because poltergeists aren't a Hollywood invention. People have been reporting this stuff for centuries. Alcohol, drunk, and the bed is shaking, that's nothing new.
The word poltergeist is German. It literally translates to noisy ghost or rumbling spirit, and that's exactly what they're known for. Not the quiet, wispy apparition floating through walls, but the chaotic, physical, throw your furniture across the room type of haunting.
And what I love about ghosts, or well, let's be politically correct, poltergeist cases, they almost always center around a specific person, and this is usually a kid.
Not okay.
Well, researchers call this person the focus or the agent. I just call them creepy kids. Now, in Enfield, that creepy kid was Janet Hodgson.
Poor thing. All right, so some paranormal researchers believe that teenagers, especially those going through emotional turmoil, can unconsciously produce psychokinetic energy. They call it recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, or RSPK. The idea is that repressed emotions literally manifest as physical disturbances.
Which sounds crazy, I know, but try to remember that Janet's parents, they just separated, hence the empty bed. She was 11, she was going through puberty, she was dealing with her dad leaving, and she was living in a cramped council house with her mom and 3 siblings. If stress could move furniture, that house would have been a war zone. Now, I truly believe that if hormones could move mountains, you just need one middle school class to do it.
But let's be real, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to that night in August of 1977 and walk through exactly what the Hodgsons experienced.
So, the family's living at 284 Green Street. We've established this. It's Peggy, the mom, and her 4 kids. Margaret, who was 13, Janet, who was 11, little Johnny, who's 10, and even more little Billy, who is 7. The house itself is not anything special. It's semi-detached, it's 2 stories, it's built in the 1920s. This is the kind of house where you can hear your neighbor sneeze through the walls,
Ew.
but where the plaster takes a pound of TNT to break through. We call these houses the bend but don't break homes, or at least I do. I just made that up. So construction people, that's a trademark.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, on the night of August 30th, Janet and Johnny share a room. Janet later described hearing a shuffling noise, like someone dragging their feet. And then her bed started shaking. And it wasn't violent at first, just enough to wake her up and make her think that something was wrong.
She calls for her mom. Peggy comes upstairs, probably expecting a bad dream situation. But then she hears a knocking coming from the wall, from inside the wall, from inside the bloody wall.
Now, a rational person's first thought is probably rats, right? Not that like I've had any experience with that.
Raccoons.
Yeah, raccoon did come into our house, guys. So old houses, thin walls, maybe some rodents throwing a party in there. But Peggy described these knocks as deliberate, rhythmic, like something or someone was trying to communicate.
The next night, things escalate, like some of our talks. The kids are in bed again, and this time, a heavy chest of drawers moves across the floor by itself. Not slides a little, moves, like a no lineman just pushed it. Peggy tries to push it back and says it feels like something was pushing against her from the other side.
Ooh.
Which is creepy. And she definitely didn't make it to the quarterback.
And that's when she does what any of us would do. She grabs the kids and runs to the neighbors, Vic and Peggy Nottingham. And here's where we get our first outside witnesses, because the Nottinghams go into the house and they hear the knocking too.
So Sheriff Vic Nottingham later told reporters that the knocking seemed to follow them around the house. He'd knock on the wall and something would knock back. He'd knock twice. It would knock twice. Like it was playing a game. Now, I personally, when I read this, wonder if it was like the memory game, you know? You're like tap, 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 and it's like tap, 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 tap.
I slay that game.
Well, I just want to let you know, and we're going to learn this pretty soon, the ghost was old, and I don't know how well he actually did in this, though.
Okay, well, Now they're playing the memory game, and that's when they decide we're calling the police. Now, here's the thing about this case that sets it apart from most ghost stories. The police actually documented what they saw.
Okay, so remember good old WPC Carol Heaps?
Mm-hmm.
So again, she responded to this call. She was skeptical going in, obviously, but she stayed at the house for a while. She was watching, she was waiting, she was taking it seriously. And in her official report, she stated, again on the record, that she saw a chair slide across the floor approximately 4 feet on its own. No one was touching it.
A uniformed police officer in an official report documenting furniture moving by itself. And you really just don't see that every day.
But the police couldn't exactly arrest a ghost. So they left and they suggested the family contact, well, someone else. And that someone else turned out to be the Society for Psychical Research. That's a thing, because in life, there is a society for everyone.
Yeah. So the Society for Psychical Research, or SPR, has been around since 1882, actually. It's one of the oldest organizations dedicated to investigating paranormal claims using scientific methods. I totally would have been a part of this, by the way, if I was around in the 1800s.
Oh, you can still be. It's a thing.
True, let's go to England.
Yeah.
They've looked into everything from telepathy to ghost sightings, and they take their work seriously.
Now, 2 investigators from the SPR took on the Enfield case. Maurice Gross and Guy Leon Playfair. And you got to remember, this is in England, these names. Gross was a retired inventor and a businessman who had recently lost his daughter in a motorcycle accident.
Ooh.
Yeah, very sad. He became interested in paranormal partly because he wanted to cope with that grief, which, again, no joking matter. So we'll move on, and except he probably should have just got a dog.
Yeah. Playfair was a journalist and author who had written extensively about paranormal phenomena, and together they would spend over a year investigating the Hodgson house, making 180 visits and conducting 25 all-night vigils. And to me, that's pure dedication.
Or obsession.
Or dedication.
You know,
dedicated to the obsession?
Dedicated to this obsession of their society, their secret society. No.
Into it.
I guess wasn't that secret. The police knew. So when Gross first arrived at the house, he wasn't sure what to expect, but within his first few visits, he claims to witness marbles and Lego bricks flying across the room. Now, This is incredibly scary because the pain of a Lego is beyond the mortal realm.
Yeah.
There was also a book floating off a shelf and a cardboard box full of pillows lifting off the floor and launching themselves across the room. Now, I would take the pillows, and that is the preferred item, against the compacted plastic that science, like the A-bomb, should have never invented.
Also, Like, that just makes me mad that I'm having to clean up this much. That's rude.
Well, and then the Legos are going to be on the floor.
And it hurts.
Oh, it is excruciating pain.
No thanks. And it wasn't just gross and Playfair seeing these things. Over the course of the investigation, more than 30 people would witness phenomena firsthand. Neighbors, journalists, photographers, even a BBC radio reporter named Rosalind Morris, who was there recording for a documentary. Photographer Graham Morris from the Daily Mirror set up cameras in the house. And this is where we get some of the most famous and controversial evidence from the case, the levitation photos. So Morris rigged a camera to take automatic photos at regular intervals in Janet's bedroom. And he captured images of Janet appearing to float above her bed, horizontal in midair, blankets swirling around her.
Now, obviously, they're skeptics of this.
Sure.
And they've looked at these photos and said, well, that's obviously just a kid jumping on a bed. Now, you know what? They might be right. But Morris insisted there was more to it. He said that Janet would be thrown from her bed with such force that she would just straight hit the opposite wall.
Oh my gosh.
In pitch darkness, but she wouldn't get hurt, which is very suspicious. Now, Morris seemed like he wanted it to mean something. Like, you know, people who follow the lyrics of prog bands. Morris later said, there is no way what she was doing was for fun. You'd have to be mad to want to do something like this. It was a completely dark room. If she were jumping, she'd be launching herself at a brick wall in pitch black.
But the photos aren't even the wildest part of this case, not by a long shot. Because in December of 1977, the Enfield Poltergeist started to speak. And now we get to the good stuff. Possession.
Yes.
A deep, guttural, masculine voice began emanating from Janet.
Do you want to give us an example?
No, I really don't. So it wasn't her voice. She was 11 years old. This voice was raspy like it hit up the Marlboros, ancient sounding, which is a debatable way to say they sounded old, and it claimed to be a man named Bill Wilkins, which, out of respect, I'll call him William.
That's very kind of you.
Yeah. The voice said things like, I come from the grave. That's a good impersonation. And I'm 72 years old, which is not something I'd admit. I forgot that it's a British ghost.
Well, yeah, you got to do the right voice. But also, I mean, I think you are dreading another number that you're going to have to say you are one day.
It would curse.
Yeah.
Like I want to do at you right now. It would threaten and it would answer questions, often with information that Janet, an 11-year-old girl from North London, shouldn't have known.
Let me hear you say my name. Come on, let me hear you say my name. No. That's not my name. Come on, my name's Morris. Let me hear you say it. Morris. Say Dr. Belloff. Come on, let me hear you say that. Come on, let's hear you say Dr. Belloff. Come, you squeak the bed. I can't hear you talking. Now, say Dr. Belloff. Come on. Come on, say it for me, Dr. Belloff. Dr. Belloff. I know. I'm 72 years old. I come from Guttural graveyard. And I have cried in the church. I want you to tell me whether you remember what happened to you when you died. Just before you died and just after you died. 2 days before I died, I went blind. Then I had an hemorrhage and I fell asleep and I died in a chair in the corner downstairs. Phil, if you're there, would you answer me the following question? What have you done with Denise's 30p? Get it down to the radio, downstairs. Sorry, Bill, can you say that again, please? Righto, Bill, I'll go and look. Thanks so much. Why can't Janet feel you? I'm invisible. You're invisible? Why are you invisible? So much H-O-S-G. Did any friends go with you? Yes, all of them. All the dogs, 68 dogs. So what do you got 68 dogs for?
so that they can protect me from you killing me. They can guide you later.
How can we kill you, Bill?
You could shoot me off.
Now, how can we shoot you if we can't see you, Bill?
By praying to God.
Sorry, I didn't hear that, Bill.
By praying to God.
By praying to God. So, what you're saying is we could get rid of you by praying to God.
Yeah.
Whether it gave her scores of the old footy games is unknown, but here's where it gets really creepy.
Footy games?
Yeah, footy games, which I thought was footsie at first, but I realized it's not.
You talking about British football?
Football.
English football?
Yeah.
Premier League? It's North London. So
Yes.
we got like Arsenal.
But that's not your team.
Tottenham.
Are we okay with those teams? Because, I mean, you don't really like them, do you?
Oh, I don't really care. Just
Okay.
Barcelona. I'm a Spanish league guy. You know what I mean? Yeah. I have darker features.
I did think he was Spanish when I met him. He's not, but, it's all because he liked Barcelona. Anyway, I was going to say this is where it gets really creepy, but it's actually been really creepy this whole time. But the voice claimed to be Bill Wilkins, which was a man who had died in the house years earlier. And investigators looked into it, and they found records confirming that a man named Bill Wilkins had lived and died at 284 Green Street. He died in a chair in the corner of the living room, which is exactly what the voice described.
So here's the story. Bill's son, Terry Wilkins, was tracked down years later. He confirmed the details. His father had died of a brain hemorrhage, blind and alone, sitting in a chair in that corner of that house, which, damn, that's fucking depressing.
A bit.
So how did Janet know that? How did an 11-year-old girl know the name, age, and I guess the comically dark way that man died before she was even born? Skeptics say she could have researched it. Maybe she found old records. Maybe she talked to neighbors. But believers point out that some of the details that voice provided weren't publicly available. And remember, this is 1977. There's no Google. There's no internet. Research meant going to libraries and digging through physical files in courtrooms and things like that. So you had to do remember when you had to do a report? And you was like, okay, I'm going to do a report on cancer. And you went and got the C encyclopedia. And then you'd get 1.5 pages about, cancer, the most complex subject in the world. And you just wrote the paper, So you just raw dog life back then, Don't let me reminisce here. We could be here a long time.
Well, mine was on Ireland and I had to use an I, so I do remember.
Yeah. And you got 2 paragraphs.
Yeah, but it really sucked if you missed that letter in the books. Sometimes you didn't have all the letters. Anyway.
Oh, you had to buy them by the letter.
Yeah.
That was the thing. Yeah. If the rich people had a whole thing of encyclopedias, we had 3 of them.
That's how I ended up on Ireland for my history paper. We had the I. So Maurice Gross recorded hours and hours of the voice. He tried various experiments to determine if Janet was faking it. He taped her mouth shut, which is a little cruel.
Yeah. That's a very, she puts the lotion.
Ugh. But anyway.
It's the hose again.
The voice continued, muffled, but still audible. He had filled her mouth with water, and she was still able to produce the voice, which would have made me a believer on the spot. Speech therapists who analyzed the recording said the voice appeared to be coming from Janet's false vocal cords, which is the vestibular folds above the actual vocal cords. It's possible to speak this way, but it's extremely difficult and painful to maintain for long periods. And Janet would allegedly speak in the voice for hours. And this kind of reminds me of the Annalise possession we did a while back. When all is said and done, the voices are sometimes the most confounding parts of the whole case. Okay, so we've been pretty deep in the spooky zone here, so let's take a breath and look at what science has to say about the hauntings in general, because there are some fascinating natural explanations for why people experience paranormal phenomena, though I do think it's paranormal.
So let's do a skeptic corner type of Q&A.
I'm all in on this. So think of it as the just in case there's a normal explanation corner. We owe it to our listeners to cover all the angles. We are nothing if not scientific here. Okay, first up.
He laughs.
Yeah, science wasn't my subject, neither
We're
was
more
geometry.
speculative here.
Okay, first up is infrasound. This is sound at frequencies below what the human ear can consciously hear, which is typically below 20 hertz. But here's the thing. Even though we can't hear it, our bodies can still feel it, and exposure to infrasound has been linked to feelings of unease, fear, and even visual hallucinations.
So if you remember, we talked about that in the Dietlove Pass pod, because everything is a circle and paranormal is a circle. This trips me out, and well, apparently it trips other people out too, because these infrasound can actually explain a lot of this phenomenon. So there was a study where a researcher kept feeling like he was being watched in a lab. So he was seeing shadowy figures in his peripheral. Now, it turned out there was a fan producing infrared sound at exactly 18.9 hertz, which apparently can cause your eyeballs to resonate and create visual disturbances. Now, honestly, whether he was also coked out of his mind like all other good scientists of the time, that's an answer that remains lost in time.
Yeah, well, surely Coke can explain about 50% of the 70s and the 80s.
Yeah, ask your parents.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they did it. I'm just saying they know
They
people
deny
did
it, but I'm looking at you, Mom. I'm not sure I believe you. I still don't know if I believe you.
Yeah.
And also, is our house below the 20 hertz? Or I really did see like a shadowy figure that turned out to be our 3-year-old son standing there in the hallway.
Well, we do know that an older couple may have expired
Oh my God,
here.
I didn't even think about that.
But they were very nice, apparently.
Yeah, we heard
Very
this was a
nice.
good juju
They're off
house.
to better and bigger and better things.
This better
They're
not be
haunting
inviting
us.
them out.
Yeah. No, they're fine. We're good.
Okay, great. All right. Well, old houses with their creaky pipes and drafty spaces can be natural generators of infrasound. Wind blowing through gaps, machinery vibrating at low frequency. All of it can create an environment where people feel genuinely haunted without any supernatural cause.
Okay, now the next question there is infrasound doesn't exactly throw chairs across the room like some angry toddler.
No, it doesn't. But there's another factor. Electromagnetic fields.
God, we're scientific here.
We really are. Give me a PhD. Some researchers have suggested that high levels of EMF can affect the temporal lobes of the brain, causing feelings of a presence, fear, and even hallucinations. The inventor of the God helmet...
The fuck is a God helmet?
Well, ask Michael Persinger, because he did experiments showing he could induce spiritual experiences by stimulating the temporal lobes with weak magnetic fields. And the God helmet, to clarify, did just that. That's what it did. He invented it. And then he used it for that, presumably because the LSD was dry on the street.
So if you have faulty wiring, this could make you think your house is haunted, which is awesome because you don't need psychedelics. You just need an old house. And in Britain, wow, there's a copious amount of old stuff.
Yes, there is. And in theory, yes, old houses often have outdated electrical systems. High EMF readings have been found in many reportedly haunted locations.
The thing about the Enfield case that's different than I think a lot of these cases is that there was actual physical events. They were witnessed by multiple people all at the same time. So you can't just mass hallucinate a chair moving, one would think. At least I would think. But I bet you're going to tell me I'm wrong.
I love to tell you you're wrong. So actually there is research on that too. Not to be a full-blown smartass, but just a partial. Group suggestion and confirmation bias are powerful, which we have talked about long ago. And what was it? The Ruth Snyder murders? I think
so, yeah.
Anyways, when people expect to see something, they often do. And in a high-stress environment where everyone's primed for paranormal activity, witnesses can genuinely believe they saw things move when they didn't, which is kind of terrifying in its own way.
Yeah, I mean, both scenarios are terrifying because one is real, one isn't. One may be real, and one certainly is. So here's another one, carbon monoxide. Now, this is one of those irrational fears I have. It's like carbon monoxide, syphilis, prions.
How does that, how do those belong in the same sentence?
Because it's just because if you look up the symptoms and what syphilis and prions do is absolutely terrifying, is all I'm saying, okay? They do really funky and horrible things. Just look it up. Maybe we'll do a pod on it. Maybe not syphilis. Maybe we won't do a pod on syphilis.
No.
But prions, maybe we'll do one of those.
Okay, so carbon monoxide.
Don't get syphilis.
Carbon monoxide.
But you won't know for years and years and years. It could be 30 years down the road, after you had one questionable night, and all of a sudden your brain it stops working.
If you guys are still listening, carbon monoxide. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Carbon monoxide poisoning can cause confusion, hallucinations, feelings of dread, and visual disturbances. There have been documented cases where families thought their houses were haunted, only to discover that they had a CO leak. The haunting stopped as soon as the leak was fixed, and you have no idea how many ghost hunting shows end like this.
So, and you've seen them.
They're
just like, it's carbon monoxide.
Mm-hmm. Which also, we saved your life, so you're welcome.
Get a detector, you morons.
Honestly.
Okay. Well, I'm not calling anybody a moron. I'm just saying they called them morons. I would not never call anybody a moron.
No.
Maybe a Mormon, but not a moron.
Wow.
So the next question, of course, is, was there actually evidence that there was a CO leak at Green Street?
No, not that was ever documented, but the house was old and the CO detectors weren't exactly standard in 1977.
So they may have been slowly poisoned and hallucinated all of it.
Possible and never ruled out. But honestly, it doesn't explain everything. Like, it doesn't explain the police officer's report. It doesn't explain the photographs. And it definitely doesn't explain Bill Wilkins, who never lied about his age. So the thing is, even the most hardened skeptics who've looked at the Enfield case admit that it's complicated, like my relationship with your music.
Oh, my music's the best.
It's complicated.
You're glad I've opened your eyes. This is why you married me.
Psychologist Chris French, who's basically made a career out of debunking paranormal claims, says it's not a slam dunk hoax. He thinks it probably started as pranks by the girls, but took on a life of its own. Manifest it? Remember, we talked about the power of girl hormones.
Which I will never, ever mention to you in any circumstance when we're disagreeing. So that's the middle ground, and that is kind of unsatisfying. Something happened in that house. Too many people saw too many things for it to be nothing. But whether that something was supernatural or just really weird and goth, that's a question. And I know where I lean personally.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we need to talk about the hairy elephant in the room, because skeptics love to bring up the fact that Janet and Margaret confessed to faking the whole thing, which I guess is pretty damning to a case when someone confesses, though we do know it could have been coerced. So history has definitely taught us this, and let's talk a little bit more about their supposed confession.
Well, except that's not exactly what happened. In 1980, a few years after the haunting ended, a journalist named Alan Radner interviewed Janet. And during that interview, Janet admitted that she and Margaret had faked some of the incidents. She said they'd hidden a tape recorder once and moved some flower pots. The key word there is some. Janet estimated that maybe 2% of the phenomena were faked. When they were bored, when investigators weren't paying attention, and when they wanted to see if they could get away with it. Kid stuff.
The paying attention thing resonates very much so.
Yes.
So Maurice Gross, the investigator, he acknowledges that this may be true. He caught them faking things on a few occasions, but importantly, he didn't think it invalidated the rest of the case. He argued that faking 2% doesn't explain the other 98%, which is how I like to cheat. Not on you. Like looking at a video game guide.
Yeah, I've seen this in action. It's because you're old and your memory is fading, and I'm sorry for that.
You shouldn't have married me.
Here's the thing that gets misrepresented constantly. Skeptics take that confession and run with it. Like, see, they admitted it was all fake. But that's not what Janet said. Even now, decades later, Janet maintains that most of what happened was real. She said in recent interviews that the experience traumatized her, that she still has nightmares about it.
My brother and I were lying in bed in the back bedroom. We was chatting and that like we normally did. And we turned the light out and settled down to go to sleep. And we could hear this shuffling noise near the bedroom door at the bottom of my bed to the chest of drawers. And the chest of drawers started shuffling and it moved towards the door. And me and my brother Johnny were both sat up and we was really frightened. And Mum came in, put the light on, and she said, "What's all this noise about?" And we said, Mum, the chest of drawers is moving." And she see it again. She see it shuffling towards the doorway, and she pushed it back, and then it started to shuffle out again, and she couldn't push it back. There was levitation, there was the voices, and then there was like incidents that happened to me that were like the curtain which wrapped itself around my neck, which was quite life-threatening for me. And it brought it home to me that this could kill you. I feel that it became to use me, maybe because it was drawn off of my energy. Maybe. I mean, I often think, why me? To sum it all up, to weigh it up all in one, I was used and abused. When Ed and Lorraine came to the house, to me it felt like some sort of comfort had arrived for the first time. In the respect that they come to try and help us. And it didn't feel like that when anyone else visited. They just seemed to visit to see what was going on and to witness something that was happening. But Ed and Lorraine, you felt warm and comforted, but they were there to try and find out what it was and how they could help you. I know people say, and I don't care what they say, it wasn't them, it was me. I know what happened, and I know it was real. How would they like it if this happened to them and they would be being called a fake or whatever? I don't care what they think. I know what happened and I know it was real. All the people that I've met are involved with this, the directors, producers, the writers, everyone involved. I value them very much, and I'm very grateful for giving us the chance to tell our true story.
Alan Radner, the journalist who got the, quote, confession, actually wrote later that he believed the case was genuine. He said the admission of occasional pranks actually made the girls more credible to him, not less. So real witnesses don't have perfect stories. Real people fudge things sometimes.
And this is where the Enfield case sits in this weird gray area, like Michael Jackson's bed.
Oh my gosh.
So there is some trickery, for lack of better words. No one disputes that fact. But there was also like 2,000 documented incidents in that 18 months. People from all walks saw it. So Dr. Melvin Willen, he spent years going through all that. Hundreds of hours of tape recordings, photographs, witness statements. And you know what he concluded? That the case couldn't be explained by trickery alone. And guess what? He's a doctor, not like a chiropractor doctor. Like he has a doctorate, a lot of student loans.
So he actually wrote a book about it. It's called The Enfield Poltergeist Tapes. And his position is basically, whatever happened at that house, it wasn't just kids messing around. And what gets me is the sheer volume of evidence. Like, if this was all a hoax, it was the most elaborate, sustained, multi-witness hoax ever pulled off by two preteen girls with no resources for a year and a half, while also going to school and living their lives.
And what was the payoff? The family didn't get rich off of this. They didn't move to a mansion. Peggy stayed at that house for years afterwards. The kids grew up dealing with the stigma and trauma of it all. However, tension's a hell of a drug. Have you seen those recent Britney videos? Yeah. We went from free Britney to who freed Britney?
Leave Britney alone.
So we've talked about the knocking. We've talked about the moving furniture. We've talked about the voices. But there are some incidents at that Enfield case that we haven't touched on yet. And honestly, these are the good ones. I can even be prone to hair raising on these arms right here, even though they don't have a lot of hair.
So are we going full spooky?
We are going full spooky. Yeah. Let's talk about the fireplace. The fireplace incident is one of the most dramatic goth things that happened there. Let's take you there. 1977, witnesses saw a iron fireplace grate literally ripped out of the wall. This thing was cemented in. Dads everywhere looked at it and they're like, this thing ain't going a damn place. It would have taken a significant force to remove it. And this happened while multiple people were watching. This one is a win for all of the ghost people.
Also, are we like Hulk status in the afterlife?
Well, if one of them was an X-Men, that might explain things.
Truth.
SPR committee member Mary Rose Barrington called it an item of, ready for bad pronunciation,
Totally.
poltergeistry of the first order, which is just like top-notch linguistics. That's the British version of what the hell just happened.
This is why I like the Brits. I'm just going to adapt the accent and the sayings.
Everything very proper.
I'm basically British. We know that, right?
You are white. That doesn't make you British.
My genealogy says otherwise. Anyway, then there were the physical attacks. Janet would get scratches on her body, marks that appeared seemingly out of nowhere. Investigators photographed them as they formed. The bedclothes would be ripped off the kids while they slept, and not gently, they were yanked with force. Margaret described being pulled by her leg across the floor while investigators watched. And one of the most famous incidents involved a pillow. Investigator Guy Playfair described walking into a room where Janet was lying on her bed, and a pillow rose off her face and floated through the air towards him. Not thrown, floated. Slowly.
So then there's a time, and this might be the coup de grace. Janet reportedly teleported. Yeah, teleported, which is a hilarious concept to me that she just turned into an X-Men. So according to multiple witnesses, Janet was seen inside the house at the same time she appeared to be standing in the neighbor's garden. When the neighbors looked up at the Hodgson's house, they saw Janet floating outside an upstairs window like she was a vampire trying to get invited in.
No thanks.
Which, dear Lord, this would have been one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life if I was there.
No.
Now,
creepy.
I'm not saying I believe in teleportation, and I'm not believing that these kids were David Blaine before David Blaine, but I am saying that multiple people reported this all independently, and no one has ever provided a good explanation other than bloody hell.
That's a solid explanation, though, by the way.
Blimey.
So the thing about the Enfield case is that it wasn't just one or two weird incidents. It was this relentless, escalating series of events that went on and on and on. Imagine living like that for 18 months, every night, not knowing what's going to happen. Is the furniture going to move? Is something going to speak through your daughter? Yeah. Janet later described it as being used by whatever was in the house. She said she had no control over when the voice would come, when things would move. It just happened, and she was the conduit.
Yeah, see, that's some creepy stuff right there. And to be honest, that's consistent with what we know about poltergeist cases in general. Because as you saw, there is a lot of ghost people out there. Yeah, I don't know if you believe that or not, because I live with one here at the house. And there's people who are part of societies. They have cards and everything. The agent in this case, of course, is Janet. And she says she has no memory of the events. And when it was happening, she just felt like she was watching herself from outside her body. This is a classic dissociative symptom. Did I sound smart?
You often sound like you're trying to sound smart.
Yeah, because I'm scientific.
No, remember that 98% to 2% ratio we talked about earlier?
Yeah, 2% right, 98% just trying really hard.
So this could be evidence of possession or evidence of a psychological break. The trauma Janet experienced, whether caused by something supernatural or something very human, was very real. So how did it end?
Yes, how did it?
After 18 months of chaos, what happened to the Enfield Poltergeist? Well, it kind of just faded away. By late 1978, the activity had decreased significantly. There were still occasional incidents, but nothing like the peak of the haunting. And by 1979, it was essentially over. Some researchers think this is actually evidence for the psychological explanation. Janet was growing up. She was moving through adolescence. If the poltergeist activity was caused by her unconscious psychic energy, it makes sense that it would diminish as she matured and stabilized emotionally.
I love that theory. Like I said, middle schoolers would move a mountain, and once she actually stabilized, it just went away. This is my favorite theory. So others believe that this ghost of paranormal origins, Mr. Bill Wilkins, Sir William, or whatever it really was, it just did what they wanted to do and moved on. So some poltergeists are just spirits and they have unfinished business. So maybe Bill just wanted to be acknowledged. Maybe he wanted to be remembered. Maybe he wanted to cry. Maybe he wanted to be listened to. maybe Bill was just like every other guy out there.
I don't listen to you. Do you know how much I know about video games and the Mars Volta? Like, just look them up, folks. They're an entertaining band, if anything, especially when they're young.
They are true.
Look at their youth videos. Yeah. Okay, so, or maybe the whole thing was a combination of factors, some genuine phenomena, some pranks, a lot of media attention feeding into itself, and eventually everyone just got exhausted and it just petered out.
So let's talk about what happened to the family afterwards, because this was honestly one of the most intriguing things to me. Peggy Hodgson's just stayed in the house until she died in 2003. So can you imagine? Just stayed in the house where all that happened?
No, not a chance in hell.
Maybe she felt like it was just her home, regardless of what happened there. My theory, however, you ready for it?
Ready.
Maybe she knew something we didn't. Maybe her and Bill had a thing.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's interesting.
Bow.
Okay. Well, Janet has spoken publicly about the case several times over the years. In 2015, when a TV series about the haunting was released, she said, "It was an extraordinary and terrifying time for us. I wouldn't wish it on anyone." She's consistently maintained that the experiences were real. Margaret has been a little bit more private, but she's also stood by her account. Neither sister has changed her story in any fundamental way. And the house itself, 284 Green Street, still there. It's still a private residence. The current owners reportedly don't experience any unusual activity, though.
So what I think this could mean is the haunting was specifically tied to Hodgson's family, not the location. Or it could mean whatever was there has finally found his peace. All right, Kathryn, verdict time. What do you think? Real haunting or just an elaborate teenage hoax?
You know, I went into this research thinking I'd come out firmly on one side, but the more I look at it, the more I think the honest answer is, I don't know. Although I do tend to lean paranormal.
Which is a full-on cop-out. You haven't copped out that hard since you got that speeding ticket.
That's true. I did say I deserved it. Give me the ticket. But hear me out. There are things about this case that defy easy explanation, like the sheer number of witnesses, the duration, the Bill Wilkins connection, the police report. These are things you can't just wave away with, oh, the kids were just pranking.
But
there were also admitted fakes. There were photos that could have been staged. There's no smoking gun video of a chair moving completely on its own without anyone nearby. And the best evidence is eyewitness testimony. And we know how unreliable that can be.
So for me, if you ask me, which you didn't, I lean towards believing in ghosts 100%. Not because I'm an idiot. Thanks for thinking that. It's what I expect out of you.
No,
it's because of a few key factors. So let's get into these. I need to sound smart again.
Okay, such as?
1, the police report. Remember, WPC Heaps? She had nothing to gain from documenting what she saw. She was the one in the very beginning. She wasn't selling a book. She wasn't looking for attention. She was just doing her job. And she wrote on the record now that she saw a chair move.
Okay, fair.
2, the Bill Wilkins connection. Even if you assume Janet somehow researched him, all that detail she provided through that voice is remarkable. And again, it was guttural, which is my favorite trope in all possession movies.
Always.
The little girl with the exorcist voice, I am in every single time. And some of that information apparently wasn't even publicly accessible.
Which is also fair.
And 3, the family's reaction. These weren't people who seemed to be enjoying this attention. They weren't profiting from it. They seemed genuinely traumatized. So Janet, she's had some psychological issues throughout her life, and she's attributing this to the haunting. That's not a behavior of someone who just decided to pull off a prank.
You know what I keep coming back to?
What?
It's the fact that this case has endured for almost 50 years.
We love ghost stories.
I do. It's been investigated, reinvestigated, dramatized in movies and TV shows, and people are still arguing about it. And if it wasn't easily, or even if it was easily provable for that matter, the truth is we're probably never going to know for certain what happened at 284 Green Street. And maybe that's okay. And maybe sometimes mysteries are meant to stay mysterious. Because isn't that what just draws us into stories like this in the first place?
The possibility that there's more out there. And I both hope, but also believe with all my heart, there's more out there that we don't understand. The world is way weirder and way more wonderful and sometimes way more terrifying than we give it credit for.
So if you hear a knock on your wall tonight,
It's probably just the pipes.
Probably.
Or an extramarital ghost affair. One of the other.
And that's our episode on the Enfield Poltergeist. Thank you so much for listening to Mugshot Mysteries.
If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps other listeners find us.
Follow us on TikTok or Instagram at Mugshot Mysteries Podcast for bonus content, behind-the-scenes stuff, and my ongoing attempts to scare Gabriel.
Which has never worked.
Yet.
Got any spooky stories of your own? We'd like to hear it from you. Drop us a message on our socials.
And until next time, stay curious.
Stay skeptical. And
maybe don't answer when something knocks. But before we leave, per usual, what did we learn today, Gabriel?
We have learned that ghosts just want to be seen like me. That what happens between you and ghosts in the privacy of your dormitory is between you and the knocking walls. That I'm really leaning hard into this ghost shagging thing. And there has to be more out there that we don't see. And science very well can get to a point where it explains the supernatural, but it doesn't make it any less real. And that if you ever see a sleepy, still child looking at you from across a dark hallway, even if this child is yours, you will be ready to jump out of a window.
Sneaky footsteps in the night, clues that vanish out of sight. Grab your hat and magnifying glass. We'll talk this case and have a blast. Mugshot Mysteries, we're on the trail. Twists and turns that never fail. Laughs and chills, it's quite the show. Who did it? Tune in to know. Stolen gem, a secret note, a shady figure in a trench coat. The clock is ticking, the plot gets thick. We'll crack this puzzle quick as a click. Mugshot Mysteries, we're on the trail. Twists and turns that never fail. Laughs and chills, it's quite the show. Who did it? Tune in to know. Follow the breadcrumbs through the haze. Every clue's a piece in this crazy maze. Fun and thrills wrapped in crime. You'll love it every single time. Mugshot Mysteries, we're on the trail. Twists